In a small, quiet town surrounded by dark forests and tall cliffs, there lived a girl named Elira. She was different from the other kids in her town. Most people thought she was strange because she liked spending time alone, especially near the old cemetery at the edge of the village. The cemetery was creepy, with cracked tombstones and overgrown grass, but Elira didn't mind it. In fact, she felt like she belonged there more than anywhere else. Elira had a secret, one that no one else knew about. She could hear whispers. Not just any whispers, though. These were voices from people who had died. At first the whispers were faint, like soft murmurs carried by the wind. But as she got closer to graves or old objects tied to someone's past, the voices became clearer. Sometimes they told her stories. Other times, they begged for help. Elira didn't know why she could hear them, but she had learned to live with it. One day, while wandering through the forest near the cemetery, Elira stumbled upon something unusual. Hidden among the trees was an old, broken-down church. Its walls were covered in moss, and parts of the roof had collapsed. No one in the town ever talked about this place, and Elira wondered why. Curiosity pulled her inside. The air inside was cold, even though it was warm outside. Dusty pews lined the floor, and sunlight streamed through cracks in the broken windows. As she walked deeper into the church, her foot hit something hard. Kneeling down, she brushed away the decaying leaves and dirt, to reveal a shiny locket. It looked very old, with intricate designs carved into its surface. Something about it felt alive. Hesitant but curious, Elira picked it up. The moment her fingers touched the metal, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. Her heart raced as icy energy surged through her body. The whispers she always heard became deafening, almost too loud to bear. "What is this thing?" Elira whispered to herself, clutching the locket tightly. The whispers grew louder, overlapping each other, until she couldn't understand what they were saying. They seemed to come from all around her, echoing off the church walls. Some of the voices sounded sad, pleading for help. Others were angry, shouting words she couldn't make out. One voice stood out above the rest, a deep, raspy whisper that sent shivers down her back. "You've awakened us," it said. "Now you must pay." Elira dropped the locket and backed away, her breath quickening. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. The room felt heavier, as if the air itself was pressing down on her. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and turning like living things. For a moment she thought she saw faces in the darkness. Faces with hollow eyes and gaping mouths. Finally, after what felt like hours, the whispers faded, and the oppressive feeling lifted. Trembling, Elira bent down and picked up the locket. Again. Whatever it was, she knew it wasn't ordinary. It held secrets, secrets that might explain why she could hear the dead. And maybe, just maybe, it held answers about her own strange gift. With the locket safely tucked into her pocket, Elira left the church and headed home. But as she walked through the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs made her jump. By the time she reached her house, her mind was racing with questions. What had she found? And what would happen now that she'd taken it? Little did Elira know, her life was about to change forever. After finding the mysterious locket, Elira's life began to change in ways she couldn't explain. At first, everything seemed normal. She went to school, helped her mom with chores, and spent time reading books in her room. But soon, strange things started happening around her. The whispers that used to come only when she was near graves or old objects now followed her everywhere. They echoed in her ears during class, whispered through the wind as she walked home, and even crept into her dreams at night. The townsfolk noticed something was off too. People who once smiled at Elira now avoided her. Some crossed the street, just to stay away from her. Whispers spread among the villagers, whispers about her. "She talks to thin air," one person said. She's cursed, another added. Even Kale, her best friend since childhood, stopped sitting with her at lunch. One day, he caught her talking to herself under a tree. When she looked up and saw him staring at her with wide eyes, she quickly stuffed the locket back into her pocket and ran home. Elira tried to ignore the way people treated her, but it hurt. She felt more alone than ever. To make matters worse, the locket seemed to have a mind of its own. It grew warm against her skin whenever she held it, and sometimes it glowed faintly in the dark. The whispers grew louder each day, begging her to listen to their stories or warning her of danger. One voice stood out, a deep, raspy whisper that sounded angrier than the rest. "You shouldn't have taken me," it hissed. "Bad things will happen." One night, Elira had a vivid dream. She found herself standing in the middle of the old church where she'd discovered the locket. The air was icy cold, and shadows danced along the walls like living creatures. In front of her stood a figure cloaked in tattered black robes. His face was hidden beneath the hood, but his glowing red eyes pierced through the darkness. He reached out a bony hand toward her and spoke in a voice that sent chills down her spine. "Do not trust the whispers," he warned. "They are not what they seem." Elira took a step back, clutching the locket tightly. Who are you?" she stammered. "I am a guardian," the figure replied. "Once, I protected the locket and kept the spirits trapped within it, but your actions have awakened them, and something far worse." "What do you mean?" "What's worse?" Elira asked, her voice trembling. "The Wraith King," the figure said, lowering his voice. "He is an ancient evil, a spirit so powerful that no mortal can control him. If you continue to listen to the whispers, you will unleash him upon this world. And when he rises, no one will be safe." Elira woke up with a start, drenched in sweat. Her heart pounded as she realized she was still clutching the locket in her hand. Was the dream real? Or was it just her imagination playing tricks on her? She wanted to believe it wasn't true, but deep down she knew something was wrong. The whispers were growing stronger, more insistent. They urged her to return to the church, promising answers if she obeyed. For days, Elira debated what to do. Part of her wanted to throw the locket away and forget about everything. But another part, the curious part, wanted to know more. Why? Could she hear the dead? What was the locket's purpose? And who was the Wraith King? She couldn't shake the feeling that the answers lay in the old church. Finally, one evening, Elira made up her mind. She slipped the locket into her pocket and headed toward the forest. As she walked, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. Shadows moved between the trees, and the wind howled eerily around her. Every step felt heavier, as though the forest itself didn't want her to go further. But Elira pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. When she reached the church, the door creaked open as if inviting her inside. Taking a deep breath, she stepped over the threshold. The moment she entered, the air turned frigid, and the whispers erupted into a chaotic chorus. Something, or someone, was waiting for her. Little did Elira know, she was walking straight into danger. Inside the church, Elira felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers that had been loud and chaotic outside were now deafening, overlapping each other like a storm of voices. Some begged for help, others demanded answers, and a few sounded angry. So angry that it made her skin crawl. She clutched the locket tightly in her hand, its cold metal biting into her palm. It was as if the locket was pulling her deeper into the church, urging her to move forward. The room was dimly lit by moonlight streaming through broken windows. Dusty pews lined the floor, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly curtains. In the center of the room stood an altar, cracked and weathered with age. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, glowing faintly under the pale light. Elira hesitated but couldn't resist the pull. Slowly she stepped closer to the altar, her heart pounding with every step. When she placed the locket on the altar, the ground beneath her feet trembled slightly. A gust of icy wind swept through the church, extinguishing the faint glow of the symbols. For a moment, everything went silent. The whispers stopped, and the air grew heavy. Then, one by one, ghostly figures began to appear around her. They were translucent, their forms shimmering like smoke. Some looked human, with sad eyes and pleading expressions. Others were twisted and grotesque, their faces distorted with rage. Illyra froze, unsure what to do. One of the spirits, a tall figure clad in black armor, stepped forward. His helmet covered most of his face, but his glowing blue eyes pierced through the darkness. He spoke in a deep, echoing voice that sent shivers down her spine. "You have awakened the locket," he said. "Now you must finish what was started centuries ago." "What do you mean?" Illyra asked, her voice trembling. "What was started?" "The ritual," the armored spirit replied. "Long ago this locket was used to trap dangerous spirits, spirits too powerful to remain free. But the ritual failed, and many were released. Among them was the Wraith King, a being of pure malice who seeks to destroy both the living and the dead." Illyra's mind raced. The Wraith King, the same name the Guardian in her dream had mentioned. "Why does everyone keep talking about him?" she asked. "What does he want?" "He wants freedom," the spirit explained, "and he will stop at nothing to achieve it. If you don't complete the ritual, he will rise again. And when he does, no one will be safe." "But how am I supposed to stop him?" Illyra asked, feeling overwhelmed. "I'm just me. I'm not special." "You are special," the spirit said firmly. "You can hear the dead. That is a rare gift, and a heavy burden. Only someone like you can wield the locket and perform the ritual." The spirit then told Illyra about the steps she needed to take. She would have to visit 3 places marked by ancient constellations carved into the altar. Each location held residual energy from the original ritual, and she would need to gather fragments of that energy to strengthen the locket's power. But there was a catch. Completing the ritual would require a great sacrifice. Though the spirit didn't explain exactly what that sacrifice would be, his tone suggested it wouldn't be easy. As the spirit finished speaking, the other ghosts began to fade away, leaving Illyra alone with the locket on the altar. Her mind was spinning with questions. Could she really do this? Was she strong enough to face whatever lay ahead? And what exactly would she have to give up? Despite her fears, Illyra knew she couldn't turn back now. The whispers had grown louder since she found the locket, and the strange occurrences in her life showed no signs of stopping. If she wanted peace, for herself and for everyone else, she had to try. Taking a deep breath, Illyra picked up the locket and tucked it into her pocket. She glanced at the constellations etched into the altar, memorizing their shapes. Then, with determination in her heart, she turned and walked out of the church. The forest awaited her, dark and foreboding, but she didn't hesitate. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. Little did she know the journey would test her courage and her soul in ways she could never imagine. Illyra's journey to uncover the truth about the locket began with the first constellation, etched into the altar, a pattern resembling a crescent moon surrounded by 3 stars. The armored spirit had told her that each constellation marked a location tied to the original ritual, and she needed to visit all 3 to gather their energy. But he hadn't told her where these places were or what dangers awaited her there. All she had was her intuition. And the whispers. The whispers grew louder as she left the forest behind and headed toward the edge of town. They guided her steps, pulling her toward an old well hidden behind a crumbling stone wall. The well was dry now, its wooden bucket long gone, but something about it felt alive. Illyra knelt beside it and peered into the dark depths. The air smelled damp and earthy, and faint glowing symbols lined the walls of the well. This was the first place. Taking a deep breath, Illyra climbed down carefully, using the jagged stones as footholds. At the bottom, she found a small chamber, lit by the same pale glow she'd seen in the church. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with a shard of crystal resting on it. The whispers swirled around her, urging her to take it. As she reached out, a cold breeze swept through the chamber, and a ghostly figure appeared before her. A woman with hollow eyes and tattered clothes. "You shouldn't be here," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "This place is cursed." "I don't have a choice," Elira replied firmly. "I need this to stop the Wraith King." The woman hesitated, then nodded sadly. "Take it, but beware. The path you walk is dangerous. Many have tried and failed." Elira grabbed the crystal shard, and the room shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling as the woman vanished, leaving Elira alone. She scrambled back up the well just as the ground beneath her feet began to crack. Her heart raced as she ran back to the safety of the forest, clutching the shard tightly. The second constellation led her to an abandoned mill near the river. The building was falling apart, its roof sagging under years of neglect. Inside, water dripped steadily from leaks in the ceiling, and the floorboards creaked with every step. Elira followed the whispers to the basement, where another shard rested on a rusted anvil. But this time, she wasn't alone. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, a man with glowing red eyes and claws for hands. He lunged at her with a growl, his movements swift and unnatural. Elira stumbled backward, her pulse racing. She remembered the armored spirit's words, "Trust your instincts." Summoning her courage, she held up the locket, and a bright light erupted from it, forcing the creature to retreat. Seizing the moment, she grabbed the shard and fled the mill, her legs burning as she sprinted through the night. The final constellation brought her to the cliffs overlooking the sea. Waves crashed against the rocks below, sending sprays of salt water into the air. At the very edge of the cliff stood a stone circle, its surface covered in moss and ancient carvings. The last shard lay in the center, glowing faintly. As Elira approached, the whispers grew deafening, overlapping in a chaotic chorus. Suddenly the ground trembled, and the Wraith King himself appeared. A towering figure cloaked in shadows, his eyes burning like embers. "So you think you can stop me?" he sneered, his voice like nails scraping against stone. "You are nothing but a child playing with forces beyond your understanding." Elira's knees wobbled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "I won't let you hurt anyone," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. With a roar, the Wraith King lunged at her, but the locket pulsed with light, creating a barrier between them. Using the distraction, Elira snatched the final shard and bolted away, her heart pounding as the cliffs shook beneath her feet. By the time she returned to the church, she was exhausted but determined. She didn't know what completing the ritual would cost her, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Little did she know, the hardest part was yet to come. Elira returned to the old church, her body aching and her mind heavy with exhaustion. She had collected all 3 crystal shards, each one glowing faintly in her hands, as if alive with energy. The whispers followed her every step, growing louder and more urgent now that she was back where it all began. When she stepped inside the church, the air turned icy cold, and shadows danced along the walls like restless spirits. She placed the shards on the altar next to the locket. As soon as they touched its surface, the symbols carved into the altar began to glow brighter, pulsing with an otherworldly light. The whispers erupted into a chaotic chorus, overlapping voices pleading, shouting, and warning her. One voice stood out, the deep, raspy whisper that had haunted her since she first found the locket. "You've done well," it said. "But this is not the end." Elira spun around, searching for the source of the voice. Standing at the edge of the room was the armored spirit from before. His glowing blue eyes locked onto hers, and his presence filled the space with both awe and dread. "What do you mean?" Elira asked, her voice trembling. "I thought I just needed the shards." "The shards are only part of the ritual," the spirit explained. They provide the power, but the final step requires a sacrifice. A piece of yourself. A piece of myself? Elira repeated, her heart sinking. What does that mean? The spirit hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. To seal the Wraith King and restore balance, you must give up your ability to hear the dead. Forever. Elira felt like the ground beneath her feet had crumbled away. Her gift, her strange connection to the whispers, was the one thing that made her different. It was the reason she could help, the reason she'd been chosen for this task. Giving it up meant losing a part of who she was. But why me? She whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Why does it have to be my gift? Because your gift is what makes you strong enough to wield the locket, the spirit replied gently. Without it, the ritual cannot succeed. If you refuse, the Wraith King will rise, and no one, not the living, nor the dead, will survive. Elira's mind raced. She thought about the whispers, the faces of the ghosts she'd met, and the pain in their voices as they begged for peace. She thought about her town, her family, and Kale, her best friend who had stopped speaking to her. Could she really walk away and let the Wraith King destroy everything? The armored spirit gave her time to think, standing silently as the whispers swirled around her. Finally, Elira wiped her tears and looked up at him. If giving up my gift means saving everyone, then I'll do it, she said firmly, though her voice shook. But how do I know this will work? How do I know the Wraith King won't come back? You will complete the ritual, the spirit said, and when it is done, the locket will become a prison once more. But remember, this is not just about sealing the Wraith King, it is about freeing those trapped between worlds. Elira nodded, determination replacing her fear. She took the locket in her hands and held it tightly. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, but she focused on the task ahead. Following the spirit's instructions, she began chanting the ancient words, etched into the altar. Each syllable felt heavy, as though she were pulling strength from somewhere deep within herself. As she chanted, the shards fused with the locket, creating a blinding light that filled the entire church. The whispers transformed into screams, some filled with relief, others with anger. Shadows writhed and twisted, trying to escape the growing power of the locket. Elira could feel her connection to the whispers fading, slipping away like sand through her fingers. When the ritual reached its peak, the armored spirit raised his hand, and the locket sealed shut with a sharp click. The light dimmed, and silence fell over the church. For the first time in weeks, Elira couldn't hear anything, not even the faintest whisper. She collapsed onto the floor, drained but alive. The armored spirit knelt beside her, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. You have done what many could not, he said. The Wraith King is sealed, and the spirits can finally rest. Elira managed a weak smile, though her heart ached with loss. She didn't know what life would be like without the whispers, but she knew one thing for certain. She had saved everyone. As dawn broke outside, the church felt lighter, almost peaceful. But Elira couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was still watching her. Little did she know, the locket wasn't completely done with her yet. Just as Elira thought the ritual was over, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The locket in her hand grew hot, burning her skin, and a deep, guttural laugh echoed through the church. Shadows twisted and writhed along the walls, forming into a massive figure cloaked in darkness. It was the Wraith King, his presence suffocating, his glowing red eyes piercing through the dim light like daggers. You think a simple ritual can stop me? He roared, his voice shaking the very foundation of the church. I am eternal. I cannot be bound. Elira scrambled to her feet, clutching the locket tightly despite the searing pain. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the monstrous being before her. She had done everything the armored spirit told her to do, yet here he was, the embodiment of pure malice, more terrifying than anything she could have imagined. The Wraith King stepped closer, his form shifting and expanding with every movement. His clawed hands reached out toward her, and the air around him crackled with dark energy. "You've meddled where you don't belong, girl," he snarled. "Now you will pay the price." Illyra wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Fear gripped her like an icy fist, rooting her to the spot. Then, amidst the chaos, the armored spirit appeared beside her. His glowing blue eyes were steady, his voice calm but urgent. "Illyra, focus," he commanded. "The locket is your weapon. Channel your strength into it. You are stronger than him. You just need to believe." "But how?" Illyra cried, tears streaming down her face. "I can't hear the whispers anymore. I don't know what to do." "You don't need the whispers," the spirit said firmly. "You have something far greater. Your courage, your resolve. Trust yourself." Taking a shaky breath, Illyra closed her eyes and focused on the locket. Though the whispers were gone, she could still feel its power pulsing in her hand, responding to her emotions. She thought about all the people she was fighting for, her family, her friends, even the ghosts who had begged her for help. Their faces flashed in her mind, giving her strength. With a cry of determination, Illyra raised the locket high above her head. A blinding light erupted from it, brighter than anything she'd ever seen. The Wraith King let out a deafening scream as the light engulfed him, pulling him toward the locket like a magnet. He thrashed and fought against the force, but it was no use. Slowly, inch by agonizing inch, he was drawn into the locket's core. "No!" the Wraith King bellowed, his voice filled with fury. "This isn't over! I will return!" And then, with a final burst of light, the locket snapped shut, trapping the Wraith King inside. The church fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting instantly. Dust settled, and the shadows retreated, leaving only the faint glow of dawn, streaming through the broken windows. Illyra collapsed onto the floor, her body trembling with exhaustion. The armored spirit knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You've saved both worlds." She nodded, weakly, too tired to speak. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the spirit began to fade, his form dissolving into golden light. "Thank you, Illyra," he whispered before disappearing completely. For a long time Illyra sat there, staring at the locket in her hand. It was warm now, almost comforting, but she knew it held unimaginable power and danger. Part of her wondered if sealing the Wraith King was truly the end, or just another chapter in a much larger story. As she finally stood up and walked out of the church, she couldn't shake the feeling that the locket wasn't completely silent. Every now and then, she thought she heard a faint whisper, barely audible. But when she turned to look, there was nothing. Little did she know, the battle might not be over after all. Life slowly returned to normal for Illyra, though normal felt different now. The whispers were gone, completely silent, and the world seemed quieter than ever before. At first it was unsettling. She had grown so used to hearing voices from the dead that their absence left a strange emptiness inside her. But as days turned into weeks, she began to adjust. The townsfolk no longer avoided her. In fact, they acted as if nothing had happened. Some even smiled at her again, though none of them knew what she had sacrificed to save them. Kale, her best friend, started talking to her once more. He didn't ask about the strange events or why she suddenly seemed distant. Instead, he invited her to hang out after school, just like old times. Illyra appreciated his effort, but she couldn't shake the feeling that things between them would never be the same. How could they? She had changed in ways he could never understand. Despite everything, Illyra found peace in small moments. She often visited the cemetery, sitting quietly among the gravestones. Though she couldn't hear the spirits anymore, she liked to imagine they were finally at rest. Sometimes she would leave flowers on the graves, whispering words of comfort, even though she knew no one could hear her. It was her way of saying goodbye, not just to the ghosts, but to the part of herself she had lost. One evening, as she walked home from the cemetery, she noticed something odd. The locket, which she kept tucked safely in her pocket, felt warm against her skin. Frowning, she pulled it out and examined it closely. Its surface shimmered faintly, almost imperceptibly, under the fading sunlight. For a fleeting moment she thought she heard a whisper, a single soft voice, but when she strained to listen, there was only silence. Elira's heart raced. Was the Wraith King still trapped inside? Or had something else awakened within the locket? She wanted to throw it away, to bury it deep in the ground where no one could find it. But something stopped her. Deep down, she knew the locket wasn't done with her yet. Whether it was a warning or a promise, she couldn't tell. That night, Elira had another dream. She stood in the old church once more, but this time it wasn't empty. The armored spirit appeared before her, his glowing blue eyes filled with both pride and sorrow. "You've done well," he said gently, "but your journey is not over." "What do you mean?" Elira asked, her voice trembling. "I sealed the Wraith King. Isn't that enough?" "The locket holds many secrets," the spirit replied cryptically, "and while the Wraith King is trapped, others may seek its power. You must remain vigilant." Before Elira could ask more questions, the dream faded, leaving her awake in her bed, her heart pounding. She reached for the locket on her bedside table, holding it tightly in her hand. It was cold now, silent, and still. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting, watching. Over time, Elira learned to live with the uncertainty. She focused on rebuilding her life, cherishing the quiet moments, and finding joy in the simplicity of everyday routines. But she never forgot what she had done, or what she might have to face in the future. The locket stayed with her, a constant reminder of the sacrifices she had made and the battles she had fought. And though the whispers were gone, Elira knew one thing for certain. The line between the living and the dead was thinner than anyone realized. Someday, it might call her back. For now she chose to move forward, leaving the past behind, but always ready, just in case.